The first night the rain came, I couldn't sleep. It wasn't the thunder or the wind, but the rhythmic sound against my apartment window. Each drop hit the glass like a whisper, syncing with a strange tapping sound I swore came from the hallway. Maple Street was quiet at night, the kind of quiet that made you aware of every creak and hum. I lived alone, third floor, corner unit, and the storm should have made me feel cozy. Instead, it felt like something was outside, waiting for me to turn off the lights that I tried to ignore it. I made tea, listened to lo-fi rain tracks, and told myself I was just tired. But the tapping didn't stop. It was faint but deliberate, like someone gently testing the door handle. I stood still, listening. Then, from beneath the steady rainfall, came a wet, dragging sound. It moved past my door and down the corridor, slow and heavy. I wanted to believe it was just a neighbor, maybe a janitor mopping during the storm. But deep down, I knew everyone on my floor had moved out last week. Everyone except me. The building had been sold. The landlord told us all to leave by the end of the month, but I'd gotten an extension. I thought it was luck. Now, it felt like punishment. The hallways smelled of damp plaster, the lights flickered, and the rain seemed to seep into the walls themselves. That dragging sound grew fainter, replaced by something else, a sigh. Not the wind. Something alive. I pressed my ear against the door, heart hammering. The sigh came again, closer this time, followed by a soft, whispering voice. I couldn't make out the words, but it was right outside. I stepped back slowly, afraid even my breathing might give me away. The rain grew louder, drowning the whisper completely, and then there was only silence. I waited an hour before daring to look through the peephole. Nothing there, just an empty hall. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had listened back through the door. The next night, the rain returned, this time heavier. The kind of storm that feels endless, like the sky itself is unraveling. I tried to convince myself that what I'd heard before was a dream, a trick of exhaustion. But when the lights began to flicker again, I noticed something odd. Wet footprints leading from the stairwell toward my apartment. Bare, human footprints. Too large to be mine. I crouched down, studying them. They weren't fresh. They shimmered slightly, as if the water refused to dry. The prints stopped right at my doormat. The air smelled metallic, like wet iron. I backed away, shut my door, and slid the bolt across. I tried to call maintenance, but my phone showed no signal. Outside, thunder rolled like distant footsteps. Sleep was impossible. I sat on my couch listening to the rain drum against the windows. Around midnight, my lamp began to dim, pulsing in and out like a heartbeat. And then, under the rhythm of the rain, came the footsteps again, inside my apartment this time. Soft, measured, like someone walking barefoot on tile. I didn't move. My chest tightened as a drop of water fell on my shoulder. I looked up. The ceiling was dry. When I finally turned toward the hallway, I saw the reflection of something standing at the end, just a tall shadow, unmoving, its outline distorted by the flickering light. It wasn't there when the light came back fully. Only a trail of water remained, glistening across the floor. That night, I dreamed of a man standing under a street lamp in the rain, looking up at my window, whispering my name. Every night after that, the rain came heavier. I started keeping the blinds closed, but curiosity always won. Around 2 a.m., I'd peek through the slats and see him, tall, motionless, facing my building. Sometimes he wore a coat, sometimes he didn't, but he was always there under that flickering street lamp, the rain streaming down his face like he didn't even feel it. That I thought about calling the police. But what would I say? There's a man standing outside in the rain. They'd tell me to lock my doors. So I did. I double-checked every window and door before bed, even though sleep never really came. The tapping started again, in rhythm with the rain. It always stopped when I got close to the door point one evening. I decided to record it. I set my phone on the floor near the door, hit record, and waited. The tapping came, soft and patient. Then the whispering again. But this time, I could make out the words, "Let me in." The voice was wet, bubbling, like someone speaking through water. My throat went dry. I didn't open the door. Not that night. When I played back the recording the next morning, I realized something worse. The voice wasn't coming from outside the door. It was behind me, inside the apartment. Moved through the apartment, every sound amplified by fear. The rain hadn't stopped in days. When I played the recording again, I heard faint breathing before the words began. Slow, damp. deliberate. My own voice whispered back. Okay. I had no memory of saying it. The next hours blurred. I found puddles forming in corners of the room, even though the roof didn't leak. The air felt heavier, thicker. It smelled of earth and mold. I heard dripping from the kitchen sink. Only it wasn't water. The liquid was darker, thicker, like something old had seeped up through the pipes. I tried to pack, but the door wouldn't open. It wasn't locked. It just wouldn't move, as if the building itself held it shut. The by evening, I started hearing the voice again. This time, it was in the walls. A soft hum under the sound of the rain, like a lullaby. I sat on the couch, paralyzed, listening to it until I fell asleep. In my dreams, I was underwater, watching rain fall above me on the surface. A figure drifted closer, tall, dark, featureless. When it reached out its hand, I felt a cold drop hit my face and woke up screaming. My apartment was silent again, but my window was open. The next morning, Megan convinced herself she'd overreacted. Cruises had security cameras, trained staff, and plenty of people around. Surely she wasn't in any real danger. Still, as she made her way to the breakfast buffet, she couldn't shake the memory of the slow, deliberate knock on her door. The corridor outside her cabin seemed longer than usual, lined with identical doors that gave no hint of the people behind them. Two uniformed crew members passed her, speaking softly in a language she didn't recognize. As they walked by, she noticed one of them glancing over his shoulder at her. Not just a quick glance, but a long, assessing look, as though measuring her reaction. Breakfast should have been a comfort. Sunlight pouring through panoramic windows, the clatter of plates, the smell of coffee and fresh pastries. But Megan's attention kept snagging on small details. A waiter refilling water glasses seemed to be lingering at her table just a beat too long. A young couple at the next table whispered rapidly to each other and kept glancing toward the entrance. And when she finally stood to leave, she caught sight of the man from the night before, the one in the dark suit, seated alone near the back. His hands were folded neatly on the table, his plate untouched. He didn't blink when their eyes met. This time, Megan didn't wait to see if he would vanish. She turned and left. She decided to spend the afternoon exploring the ship. Deck 7 had several quiet lounges and a library that smelled faintly of old paper despite the ocean air. In the library, she struck up a brief conversation with an older British woman named Helen, who was knitting in the corner. When Megan mentioned seeing a man in a dark suit, Helen's needles paused mid-click. Tall, thin, doesn't eat, Helen asked, her voice low. I've seen him too. 3 years ago, on this very ship. Different cruise. He was watching people then as well. Before Megan could ask more, another passenger entered, and Helen's demeanor instantly brightened, as if she hadn't said anything at all. That evening, Megan noticed a change in the ship's atmosphere. The wind picked up, rattling the glass doors on the outer decks. The hallways seemed dimmer, shadows stretching farther than they should. She passed a security camera mounted above the stairwell and had the sudden, irrational feeling that it wasn't connected to anything at all. Back in her cabin, she locked the door and tried to distract herself with a movie on the tiny wall-mounted TV. Halfway through, the screen flickered, briefly showing what looked like live footage of the ship's exterior decks at night. In the grainy image, a lone figure stood at the railing, unmoving, staring out at the sea. She shut off the TV, her heart pounding. The ship's engines throbbed beneath her feet, steady and relentless. But she couldn't shake the growing sense that the ocean majesty wasn't just carrying her across the Caribbean. It was carrying something else, something that didn't belong among the living. The knock came at midnight. 3 times. Slow. Heavy. Each strike shook the wood, but the handle never turned. I stood on the other side, frozen, listening as the rain poured outside. I wanted to scream, but my voice wouldn't come. When I looked through the peephole, there was only darkness. Something wet began seeping under the door, thick, black water spreading across the floor. It smelled of rot and river mud. I stepped back, slipping slightly as the puddle grew. My reflection stared up from the water, only it wasn't mine. It was smiling. The lights flickered on again for a moment, and I saw something standing outside in the hallway, half drowned, skin pale and rippling. Then darkness swallowed everything again. By the next day, the entire building seemed to be breathing. The walls pulsed softly, like lungs filling with water. I tried breaking a window, but it wouldn't shatter. The rain outside pressed hard against the glass, as if trying to get in or keep me in. My reflection looked wrong in every surface. It blinked when I didn't. At dusk, the floorboards began to creak. Water rose from beneath them, slow but steady. I climbed onto the kitchen counter, clutching my phone, praying for a signal. When the screen finally flickered to life, I saw a message waiting. It was from an unknown number. You opened the door. I didn't. But the door was open now, wide, leading into a black, rippling corridor that shouldn't exist. The sound of rain echoed from deep within it. I stepped down into the water and walked toward the sound. The hall stretched endlessly, slick and echoing with every step I took. The rain was louder here, as if I were walking directly beneath the storm. Water dripped from the ceiling. I passed doors, hundreds of them, each slightly ajar, each hiding something breathing inside. Faces flickered in the shadows, pale and open-eyed. Some whispered my name. Others just watched at the end of the hall. I found a mirror. My reflection stood still while I trembled. Behind it, I saw the man under the street lamp. He smiled, raised his hand, and mouthed, "You're home." The mirror rippled like water and pulled me through. I woke in darkness. The rain had stopped. I was lying in a shallow river that flowed through what looked like the remains of my apartment. Walls crumbled, furniture drifting slowly past. The air was cold, silent. I stood, shivering, and saw the man again, waiting on the far bank. He looked almost kind now, like someone welcoming me home after a long trip. That he spoke softly, his voice no longer wet or broken. The rain doesn't take. It returns. I didn't understand, not until I looked down and saw my reflection in the black water. My skin was pale, translucent. My eyes were hollow. I was part of it now. Else does. The building stands empty, windows dark, always waiting for rain. When the storms come, I stand under the same street lamp, watching the windows, listening for movement inside. Sometimes, I see someone looking out, a new tenant maybe, unable to sleep. That I whisper through the rain, soft enough to blend with the thunder. Let me in. And when they whisper back, when they say okay, the rain begins again. It always begins again.